stans. Yes, it's a dry and beaten to death topic at this point, but I believe that I have something of value to say. Otherwise, I obviously wouldn't have made this video. Granted that most of you most likely don't know me, I might as well just introduce myself. So what is up, my fellow nuckos? It's your friendly neighborhood catgirl commentator. Listen, I can't be fucking asked to change my intro, man. And obviously, we're gonna be covering stans today. Get a snack, get a drink, get a blanket if you may, and I hope you enjoy.
Pull up out the Honda, I'm watching. I don't care if you call me a stalker. 3 a.m. I'm outside, I'm walking. Out here striving, I'm just looking for some water. Nova gang, we creeping, yeah we lurking. I'ma ride, I'ma die for my brothers.
Firstly, let's cover who the stans like to flock to and make the shepherd to their herd. A stan can stan, well, anyone, but their most common victims are influencers, whether that be a musician or a group of them, a YouTuber, or even a puppeteer. As long as someone has enough influence to cultivate an audience, there will always be a possibility that that person will have a stan. And the larger their audience grows, the closer the probability of that happening reaches 1. If you're wondering why I decided to lead with this and why I didn't just outright go in on stans, is because I want to give a better idea of who people can stan rather than just falling back onto obvious examples such as Dream, Corpse Husband, BTS, and other K-pop groups. Usually, at least from what I've seen, the victims of stan and stan culture seem to be unaware of their stans, or they are aware of them but don't feed into them. However, there is a very obvious outlier that I think everyone watching this video already knows about: Dream. And yes, to a lesser extent, I guess you could say Corpse Husband kind of caters to his stans, but it's nowhere near the amount that Dream does. This man even embraces them in his backup Twitter's bio, reading, "Dream stan supremacy, parentheses, unless you're toxic." And yes, the parentheses unless you're toxic portion is important, but I will be talking about that later. There's really no point in me explaining this portion any further, honestly, since it was sort of meant to be a type of get your feet wet, dip your toes into the pool for stans and who they usually stan if you're somehow unaware of it. Alright, so let's cut right to the chase. What is a stan legitimately defined as? According to the Oxford Dictionary, a stan is defined as, quote, an overzealous or obsessive fan of a particular celebrity, end quote. However, I should probably clarify which portions of that actually matters in context to how the word should actually be used, or how I will be setting my definition for the word and be using it throughout this video. A stan is an obsessive fan who dedicates their entire being to the person they are stanning. Yes, I know it seems a lot more dramatic than how Oxford defines it, but keep in mind I'm taking into account where and how the term originated. So now that I've set the basis for how I will be utilizing the term stan from here on out, there's a clear distinction that needs to be made. There's a difference between a stan and a superfan. A stan is as I have already defined, but a superfan is what the quote good stans seemingly are. A superfan is more so someone who enjoys a creator or influencer, but isn't obsessed with them to the point where they have nothing, and I mean that in every sense of the phrase, nothing outside of that person going for them. Is that a bit harsh? Possibly, but it's the truth. As Bunny said in the intro, quote, and no, this doesn't mean that they're bad people because the grand majority of them aren't. The good stans are more so superfans than stans, which would fall under the category of bad stans. And just in case there are some stans in the audience for this video and don't know the context behind the word, which if you don't, I'm honestly baffled since the context is literally brought up almost every time stans are discussed. Essentially, the quickest rundown of the history behind it I can give is the song by Eminem, Stan, is where the term came from, and the situation surrounding the song is there was a fan who would write Eminem progressively, getting more and more obsessive, and obviously mentally unwell. He went to the point where he tried to look like Eminem, but the worst of it all is he would end up driving his pregnant wife, who was tied up in the trunk of his car, and himself off of a bridge into a body of water, killing them both. When the term first came out, it was meant to call someone what is essentially a replicant of the guy the song Stan is about. But over the years, the weight of the word has obviously lifted. But that doesn't mean that calling yourself a stan loud and proud isn't looked down upon as much as it was back then now. If anything, it's looked down upon more now than it was back then. But honestly, for the wrong reasons. The word annoying and the feeling of annoyance is now what is commonly associated with stans, when that shouldn't be the case. But all in all, if you label yourself as a stan, it only makes you look as bad or nearly as bad as the person who the term originated from, which I'm sure most of you don't want. So if that's the case, superfan is a much more fitting term, and it won't misconstrue you or your appreciation for someone or something. Yes, some of the good stans can be a bit obsessive, but if you're not putting anyone at risk and you're mostly keeping to yourself, you'd fall under the realm of superfan for me. But at that point, we're just splitting hairs, let's keep it real. Whether you're a stan of someone in the MCYT sphere, corpse husband, K-pop, there are still going to be legitimate, by the definition, stans in your community, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. If you need an example for each of those communities, I'm gladly going to give them. Firstly, the Dream stans who've tried doxing him.
Well, after this guy doxed Dream, somebody else also doxed Dream. They leaked all of his private information. His full name, his sister's name, his parents' name, even where he went to school. Now, after all of this came out, Dream said on his private Twitter account that this dox was actually fake.
Yes, while some of the info was incorrect, that's besides the point. The point here is that they tried to reveal where Dream lives. If that's not indicative of over-obsessive behavior, then I don't know what is. In my opinion, this is stalker-like behavior since they are purposefully trying to figure out where the object of their affection lives. But while we're on the topic of doxing, the K-pop stan community has also been known to dox and send death threats to people for not staying in the same group as them, let alone exist in an online space or share a platform with them. I couldn't access r/Kpop Reddits since it's a private subreddit, but from that little excerpt, I think it's quite telling of how some of the K-pop standom acts towards doxing. However, there's really no big reason for me to go full deep dive into all the problems with K-pop stans, since John Swen has already made a video well documenting the major problems within the K-pop stan community and the larger community to a lesser extent. Yes, I know his credibility was essentially shattered after his drama with Dream, but that shouldn't take away from the way the video was presented or any of the arguments in it. Next, onto Corpse Baddie, or as most people know her, the girl who got Corpse Husband's hair reveal tattooed on her arm. While less important, or I guess worrying than the prior two examples, this is still a prime example of current legitimate stan culture. She is obsessed with Corpse to the point where she literally got a part of him tattooed onto her body. Not much more needs to be said. As far as that goes, that's all the more that needs to be said for this portion of the video anyways, so let's move on to the next portion. Now you're probably wondering what has this whole video been leading to, haven't you? Well, obviously, me giving some criticism and advice for the stans. Firstly, the most obvious critique, being a stan is not mentally okay. For one, devoting so much of your life, your time online, the time you interact with other people to just talk about, think about, or even watch one singular person or group of people who will frankly never know you exist just isn't healthy. And that should be quite obvious. To say it isn't is just plain ignorance. A normal, healthy person should not be going on about the same person for what seems all 24 hours of every day. Again, in no capacity is it healthy to do that. There's no way that constantly participating and engaging in that type of behavior isn't draining for a person after any amount of time, whether that be short-term or long-term. It'd only be natural since, with my personal experience, if I devote a lot of time to a specific thing, whether it's an edit, a video, or anything really, I tend to get burnt out afterwards, so I'd only expect or assume the same thing for stans. And to try and force myself into doing something after burning out only further wears me out and demotivates me, sending me into a constant downward spiral that destroys my productivity. So this is a question I do indeed have for the stans that I would like answered. Is it mentally deteriorating to be constantly devoted to a person or a thing? And I don't want to cop out no for an answer. I want you guys to genuinely self-reflect and see if this is all worth it in the end. Is it worth sacrificing a social life, mental health, or productivity to do this? If that isn't the pushing point for some of you, so be it. I'll continue on and take it a step further. Even after knowing the context and history behind the word stan, is it still worth calling yourself that or acting underneath that label? Because if I'm being 100% honest, if you still call yourself a stan even after learning the tragic history and meaning behind the word, that's honestly fairly worrying to me, because when you do that, you're just radiating the aura of, yeah, I'm over-obsessive and I wear that proudly even though I really shouldn't. You shouldn't wear the label stan proudly, and you shouldn't be trying to turn such a frankly depressing term into this cool and quirky thing that should be welcomed with open arms. It's like trying to turn stone into gold. It's something that shouldn't be done, and if it is done, it's completely irreversible after that point. And I hate to point to the obvious example, but Dream, the definition of stan shouldn't be changed or amended or anything of that sort for that very fucking reason. A stan is not a, quote, group of people with similar interests while expressing this interest through shared morals, love, and creativity. That is what a community is, not a stan. Most definitely not a stan. And I think I've made that quite clear throughout this video. Stan culture is something that shouldn't be widely accepted or accepted at all. It should be widely discouraged because it's not healthy. Not for the person standing, and definitely not for the person being stanned. And no, before someone tries to say that I'm painting every stan with the same stroke, the same paint, and the same fucking brush, I'm not. I've made that clear. Not all stans are bad, but the ones who aren't bad seem to use the wrong terminology and in the process, sadly, get looped in with all the bad actors of their respective communities. The bad actors I'm referring to being the obvious, legitimate stans as I've made clear. So as I've been saying throughout this video, not all stans are bad. It's just that the bad ones outperform the good ones in the eyes of the public. So the good stans, or as I've been calling them, super fans, often get unfairly looped in with them, which is obviously stupid. I don't really need to say much more about that, as I don't want to reiterate myself for the nth time. Listen, I don't hate stans. I know most of you aren't bad people. I've actually only had good experiences with those who call themselves stans. But I don't want genuinely good people to be demonized in the eyes of the public because of a few bad actors. That's putting it lightly, I know, but there's no other way to phrase it currently coming to my mind. Now for the actual outro to the video. I would firstly like to thank Bunny and Dingo for being on this video, as well as those who gave feedback to the video and the script along the way. If you watched all the way here, thank you. I hope you enjoyed watching and took some amount of meaning from this. But since the 4-year anniversary of VIII will be here in the next few days at the time of me recording this, I decided to use it in memorial to Rubik's Cubed. His editing and this specific edit is a big reason as to why I started editing and still am editing to this very day. Rest in peace, Rubik's Cubed, and thank you for being an amazing editor as well as an inspiration to me while you are here. Again, thank you for watching. This has been Pridwin, logging out.
Everything will go my way, yeah, I'm such a spoiled brat. Yeah, I can tell you're fake, I can see right through your mask. I can do this every day.